In 1908, deep inside the ruins of an ancient palace on the island of Crete, an archaeologist uncovered something no one expected. Not a statue, not gold, not a weapon, but a disc, made of clay, inscribed in a spiral, stamped with strange symbols no one had ever seen before. More than a century later, we still cannot read it. This is the story of the Phaistos Disc, one of archaeology's most elegant and unsettling mysteries. The year was 1908. Italian archaeologist Luigi Pernier was excavating the ancient Palace of Phaistos. The palace dated back to the Bronze Age, roughly 1700 BCE. It belonged to the Minoan civilization, a culture known for sophisticated architecture, vibrant frescoes, maritime trade, advanced urban planning, but also known for something else: undeciphered writing systems. During excavation of a basement room, Pernier discovered a small circular clay disc, roughly 15 centimeters in diameter, inscribed on both sides, and unlike anything ever found before. The disc contains 241 impressions, grouped into 61 sections, created using 45 unique stamped symbols, not carved by hand, not scratched into clay, stamped, pressed into wet clay using pre-made seals. This is extraordinary, because stamping implies standardized tools, reusable character molds, intentional layout, reproducibility. In other words, proto-printing technology. More than 3,000 years before Gutenberg. But here's the mystery. No other object like it has ever been found. No additional discs. No fragments. No matching stamps. It appears and disappears in history. To understand the disc, we must understand its world. The Minoans thrived on Crete during the Bronze Age. They built palaces at Knossos, Malea, Phaistos. They engaged in trade across the Mediterranean. They developed writing systems such as Linear A and later, their mainland successors used. Linear B was deciphered in 1952. Linear A remains undeciphered. The Phaistos disc does not match either script. Its symbols are pictorial. Human heads, birds, shields, plants, tools. Some resemble hieroglyphs. Others resemble nothing known. It stands apart, isolated, unclassifiable. The layout of the disc is hypnotic. A spiral begins at the outer edge and winds inward, each section separated by vertical lines. This spiral format is rare in ancient writing. Most scripts are linear, left to right to left, top to bottom. But a spiral forces the reader to move physically with the text, to rotate the object, to follow the curve. It feels ceremonial, almost ritualistic. Was it meant to be read aloud, displayed, used in religious ceremony? Or is the spiral symbolic, representing cycles, eternity, the cosmos? We don't know. When the disc was first revealed, scholars were electrified. It suggested a new writing system, a lost language, a breakthrough in Bronze Age literacy. But excitement quickly turned into confusion. No parallel inscriptions, no bilingual text, no Rosetta Stone. Without comparison material, decipherment becomes nearly impossible. And so the disc entered a strange category: authentic. Ancient, but unreadable. Is it even writing? Some researchers argue the repeated symbol groups suggest language. The structured divisions imply grammar. The frequency patterns resemble syllabic scripts. Others argue it could be a ritual board, a game, a decorative object, a symbolic object rather than phonetic writing. But the evidence leans toward structured communication. If it is writing, it may represent a language that vanished, without descendants, without survivors, without explanation. The disc challenges assumptions. If it is authentic, and most archaeologists accept that it is, then Bronze Age Crete possessed stamp-based inscription technology, organized symbolic systems, advanced communicative experimentation, and yet, we have only one example. Imagine discovering a single printed book from the Renaissance with no other books in existence. You would question everything. That is the Phaistos Disc. It feels like a fragment of a lost library. A whisper from a civilization that left us more art than explanation. In a museum case in Crete, the disc sits quietly, small, unassuming, its symbols spiraling inward like a question folding into itself. We have deciphered Egyptian hieroglyphs. We have decoded Linear B. We have mapped the human genome. And yet, this small clay disc still resists us. Picture this. It's 1908. On the sun-drenched island of Crete, an Italian archaeologist named Luigi Pernier is excavating the ruins of a Minoan palace at Phaistos. In a side room, tucked away in an underground repository, he uncovers something truly extraordinary. Not gold, not jewels, but a small, unassuming clay disc, about 15 centimeters in diameter. It might not sound like much, but this single artifact, now known as the Phaistos Disc, has puzzled scholars and amateur sleuths for over a century. Why? Because it's covered in a spiral of stamped symbols, a language no one has ever been able to read. So, what exactly is the Phaistos Disc? Let's take a closer look. It's a fired clay disc, looking a bit like an ancient frisbee. On both sides, a total of 241 symbols are imprinted in a clockwise spiral, leading from the edge to the center. What's incredible is that these aren't hand-drawn. They were pressed into the soft clay using prefabricated stamps or seals. This makes the Phaistos Disc one of the earliest known examples of printing with movable type, centuries before Gutenberg's printing press. Think about that for a second. In the Bronze Age, around 1700 BCE, someone had already developed a system of reusable characters. This level of technological sophistication is mind-blowing for its time. The symbols themselves are a fascinating mix. There are 45 distinct signs in total. Some are easily recognizable: a man walking, a helmeted head, a fish, a bird, a flower. Others are more abstract: geometric shapes, lines, and patterns. These symbols are arranged into groups, separated by vertical lines. These groups likely represent words or phrases. But what do they say? That's the million-dollar question. The script is unlike anything else found in the Minoan world. It's not Linear A, the other undeciphered Minoan script, nor is it Linear B, the early form of Greek that was deciphered in the 1950s. The Phaistos Disc is a complete one-off, an archaeological anomaly. This uniqueness has led to a flood of theories, ranging from the plausible to the outright fantastical. Let's start with the more academic ideas. Many scholars believe the text is a hymn or a religious prayer. The repetition of certain symbol groups suggests a ritualistic or poetic structure. One group, featuring the helmeted head and a shield, appears several times. Could this be the name of a deity or a powerful ruler? Another theory is that it's a legal document, perhaps a treaty or a proclamation of law. The formal stamped nature of the disc could lend weight to this idea, suggesting it was an official document meant to last. Some researchers have even proposed it's a calendar or an astronomical almanac, with the symbols tracking celestial events or seasonal festivals. The spiral layout could represent the cyclical nature of time, the sun's path, or the changing seasons. Then we have the more creative and sometimes controversial interpretations. One popular idea is that the disc is a board game. The spiral path could be the track, and the different symbols could represent squares with different instructions, like an ancient version of snakes and ladders. While it's a fun thought, most archaeologists find this unlikely given the context where it was found: a temple, repository alongside other sacred objects. Another theory suggests it's a piece of music, with the symbols acting as musical notes or instructions for a performance. Given the importance of music and dance in Minoan culture, as depicted in their frescoes, this isn't entirely out of the question. And of course, no great mystery is complete without theories of extraterrestrial involvement. Yes, some have proposed that the disc is an alien artifact, a message from another world. The strange symbols and advanced printing technology are cited as proof. While this makes for a great sci-fi story, there's zero evidence to support it. The materials and artistic style of the disc are entirely consistent with other Minoan artifacts from that period. It's a product of human ingenuity, not alien visitors. The biggest hurdle to deciphering the disc is the lack of context. It's what linguists call a hapax, a unique occurrence. With Linear B, scholars had hundreds of tablets to work with, which allowed them to spot patterns and cross-reference symbols. With the Phaistos Disc, we have just this one artifact. It's like being given a single page from a book written in a completely unknown language and being asked to translate the entire story. We don't know what language the symbols represent. Is it an unknown Minoan dialect? Is it related to Anatolian languages like Luwian? Or is it a language from a completely different, undiscovered civilization? Without more examples of this script, a true decipherment is almost impossible. It's the ultimate cryptographic challenge. Over the years, dozens of proposed decipherments have been published. People have claimed it's written in Greek, Basque, Slavic, Semitic, and various other languages. One scholar translated it as a court list, another as a magical incantation. The problem is, none of these translations have been widely accepted by the academic community. Why? Because they can't be independently verified. Without a Rosetta Stone for the Phaistos Disc, a parallel text in a known language, any translation remains pure speculation. You could make the symbols fit almost any language if you're flexible enough with the rules. Despite the challenges, the quest continues. Modern technology is offering new tools to analyze the disc. High-resolution 3D scanning allows researchers to study the impressions in minute detail, looking for clues about how the stamps were made and used. Statistical analysis and computational linguistics are being used to search for patterns in the symbol sequences, comparing them to the structures of known languages. For example, some analyses suggest the language is written from right to left, and that the text has a syllabic structure where each symbol represents a syllable rather than a single letter. These are small but important steps forward. But there's another, more skeptical view that we have to consider. A few experts have even questioned the disc's authenticity. Could it be an elaborate hoax created by Pernier himself or someone else to fool the archaeological world? The main argument for this is its sheer uniqueness. It's just too different from everything else. However, the overwhelming majority of archaeologists dismiss this idea. The disc was found in a sealed, undisturbed archaeological context. Thermoluminescence dating tests performed on the clay have confirmed that it was fired in the 2nd millennium BCE, consistent with the Minoan period. The craftsmanship, while unique, fits within the broader spectrum of Minoan art. So, while it's good to be skeptical, the evidence strongly points to the disc being a genuine Bronze Age artifact. So what does this all mean? The Phaistos Disc remains an enigma, a beautiful and frustrating puzzle locked in time. It's a tangible link to a lost world of thought, a voice from 3,700 years ago that we can't yet hear. It represents the limits of our knowledge, but also the boundless human desire to understand the past. Every symbol stamped into that clay is a question mark. Who made it? What was its purpose? Was it a poem to a goddess, a treaty between kings, a story of heroes, or something we can't even imagine? Perhaps one day, a new discovery will provide the key. Maybe another tablet with the same script will be unearthed somewhere else in Crete or the Aegean, giving us the context we so desperately need. Until then, the Phaistos Disc will continue to captivate us. It's a testament to the fact that history isn't just a collection of known facts. It's also a vast ocean of unanswered questions. It reminds us that ancient people were just as complex, creative, and intelligent as we are. They had technologies, languages, and ideas that could still surprise us. The spiral on the disc seems to draw us in, inviting us to try and unlock its secrets, a journey into the heart of a Minoan mystery. What do you think the Phaistos Disc says? Is it a prayer, a story, a game, or something else entirely? What if we've been wrong all along? What if the spiral on the Phaistos Disc is not a language? What if the 241 stamped symbols are not words, not prayers, not history, but something else entirely? For over a century, scholars have assumed the disc encodes speech. But what if it doesn't? Tonight, we confront the most unsettling possibility in this mystery, that we may be trying to read something that was never meant to be read. Before we can decide whether the disc represents language, we must ask, what qualifies as writing? Most writing systems share core features: a consistent set of symbols, repetition and pattern frequency, grammatical structure, representation of sounds or ideas, use across multiple texts. Consider Egyptian hieroglyphs, pictorial, but phonetic; cuneiform, wedge-shaped impressions encoding language; linear be deciphered through phonetic patterning. Each system left behind many examples, but the Phaistos Disc, it stands alone. One object, no archive, no duplicates, no bilingual key. This is the first red flag. Writing systems rarely exist in isolation. Despite its isolation, the disc does show structure. Linguists have examined symbol frequency, symbol clustering, position within word groups, repeated sequences. Some symbols appear often at the end of groups. That resembles grammatical endings. Certain combinations repeat consistently. That resembles vocabulary. But critics argue, with only 241 total signs, statistical conclusions may be unreliable. The sample size is small. We may be detecting patterns because we expect to find them. Human brains are pattern-seeking machines. We see faces in clouds, constellations in random stars, words in noise. Are we doing the same here? The disc was discovered at the Palace of Phaistos in Crete, the same civilization that used linear A, so naturally scholars asked, Is it a variant of linear A? The answer appears to be no. The symbols do not match. The structure differs. Linear A uses linear, abstract signs. The disc uses pictorial stamps. If the Minoans already had linear A, why create a completely different script? Was it ceremonial, imported, experimental, or unrelated entirely? This divergence deepens the mystery. Here is the radical idea. What if the disc is not language, but notation? Possibilities include a ritual board, a game, a mnemonic device, a symbolic calendar, a ceremonial object. Some researchers propose it may represent choreography, instructions for ritual movement. Others suggest it may be a symbolic prayer cycle, not phonetic language but icon-based invocation, or even a magical object. In many ancient cultures, symbols themselves were believed to hold power. Meaning was secondary to form. If so, the disc might not encode speech and might encode belief. Now we confront a controversial hypothesis. Was the disc a forgery? The discoverer, Luigi Pernier, uncovered it in 1908. Some critics argue it is suspiciously unique. It appeared during intense scholarly competition. Its stamping technique is unparalleled in the Bronze Age. Could it have been planted? Modern testing, however, complicates this claim. Thermoluminescence dating suggests the clay is genuinely ancient, and the disc was reportedly found in a sealed archaeological context. A forgery is possible, but increasingly unlikely. Still, the mere existence of the hoax theory reminds us, extraordinary artifacts demand extraordinary scrutiny. There is another dimension to this mystery: the human need to decode. When Michael Ventris deciphered linear B in the 1950s, it reshaped Aegean history. It proved that Mycenaean Greeks used writing centuries earlier than thought. Since then, scholars have dreamed of a similar breakthrough. The Phaistos Disc tempts us. It looks solvable. It feels structured, but perhaps that is the illusion. We are drawn to spirals, to puzzles, to the promise that meaning waits just beyond the next hypothesis. Let's weigh the evidence. For language, structured repetition, positional patterns, word-like groupings, cultural context of literacy. Against language, single artifact, no known related script, no bilingual reference, limited data. The truth? We do not know. And that uncertainty is what makes the disc extraordinary, because it challenges not only archaeology but our assumptions about communication itself. Over a century, dozens of scholars, hundreds of proposed translations, every single one different. The Phaistos Disc has been called a hymn to a mother goddess, a military roster, a calendar, a love poem, a magical spell, a lost Indo-European text, even a message from Atlantis. And yet, not one translation has gained universal acceptance. Tonight we examine the boldest attempts to read the spiral, and why they all collapse under scrutiny. After its discovery at the Palace of Phaistos in Crete in 1908, scholars immediately assumed the disc encoded language. The early 20th century was an age of decipherment. Ancient scripts were falling. Egyptian hieroglyphs had been cracked in the 19th century. Cuneiform had yielded its secrets. Confidence was high. Some researchers tried linking the disc to Greek, others to Anatolian languages. Some argued it encoded a lost Minoan tongue related to linear A. The problem? Each scholar assigned phonetic values differently. Because without a bilingual key, any sound value is guesswork. Imagine assigning random sounds to emojis. You could construct sentences, but they would reflect your assumptions, not the author's intent. One of the most popular interpretations claims the disc is a religious hymn. Supporters point to repeated symbol groups resembling refrains, possible feminine imagery, the spiral's ritual symbolism. They propose the text praises a mother goddess of Bronze Age Crete. But here's the problem. The phonetic assignments used to reach this translation are speculative. Change a few assumed sounds, and the hymn becomes something else entirely. The structure might resemble poetry, but structure alone does not prove content. Others have argued the disc is administrative. A list of warriors, a census, an inventory of goods. After all, many Bronze Age scripts were used for record keeping. When Michael Ventris deciphered linear B in the 1950s, the tablets turned out to be bureaucratic records, not epic poetry. So perhaps we are romanticizing the disc. Perhaps it is simply economic documentation. But critics counter. Why use a spiral layout for accounting? Why use pictorial stamps rather than efficient linear marks? Why only one copy? Administrative texts are usually abundant. The disc feels deliberate, ceremonial, unique. Some linguists suggest the disc encodes a language from Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. Trade between Crete and Anatolia was active during the Bronze Age. Perhaps the disc represents an imported script. Perhaps it encodes Luwian or another Indo-European tongue. But the evidence remains thin. The symbol set does not clearly match known Anatolian scripts. And again, without a bilingual comparison, correlations are speculative. It is like trying to translate a language with no dictionary, no parallel texts, and no surviving speakers. Here lies the central problem. Every proposed translation begins the same way. 1. Assign tentative sound values to symbols. 2. Adjust values until recognizable words appear. 3. Interpret the result within a cultural framework. But this method is dangerously flexible. If you tweak the sounds enough, you can discover almost anything. Language can be forced to fit expectation. This is confirmation bias at work. The disc becomes a mirror. Scholars see what they hope to see. To understand failure, we must understand success. Linear B was deciphered because hundreds of tablets existed. Patterns were statistically robust. Place names could be identified. Bilingual and contextual clues existed. The Phaistos disc offers none of these advantages. It is a single voice without context. And a single voice is easy to mishear. Here is the uncomfortable reality. The disc may not be decipherable. Not because it lacks meaning, but because we lack data. With only 241 signs and no parallels, linguistic certainty may be impossible. Every translation so far collapses under scrutiny. Not because scholars are careless, but because the evidence is insufficient. And yet, the mystery persists. Because the spiral invites us inward. It tempts us to believe that meaning lies just one breakthrough away. Imagine holding a voice from 3,500 years ago. You can see its symbols, you can trace its spiral. You can feel the ridges where each stamp pressed into wet clay, but you cannot hear it. You cannot understand it. The Phaistos disc speaks, and we remain silent. Tonight we close our journey not by solving the mystery, but by asking a deeper question. What if the disc's greatest meaning is not its message, but our inability to decode it? Language feels permanent. We write books. We carve monuments. We archive data. But history tells another story. Entire civilizations have vanished, their scripts unread, their words lost. The people of Bronze Age Crete once used multiple writing systems. We have partially deciphered Linear B, but Linear A remains a mystery. And the Phaistos disc? It stands alone. One artifact, one voice, one silence. Language survives only when communities survive, when scripts are copied, when knowledge is transmitted. The disc reminds us how easily meaning can vanish. Why does this object captivate us so deeply? Because humans are interpreters. We look for patterns, intentions, stories. When we see 45 repeating symbols arranged deliberately, we assume language. We assume thought. We assume narrative. The spiral pulls us inward psychologically as well as visually. It promises revelation. And that promise keeps scholars returning decade after decade. Not because we are certain it can be solved, but because we believe meaning must exist. Even without translation, the disc tells us something powerful. The stamping technique suggests conceptual planning. Each symbol required a carved stamp. This hints at standardization, design foresight, possible replication. Was it an experiment in early printing? If so, it predates Gutenberg by millennia. The disc also suggests aesthetic intentionality. The spiral is not efficient. It is artistic, symbolic, perhaps ceremonial. Whatever its purpose, it reveals a culture capable of abstraction, organization, and symbolic sophistication. It reshapes how we view the Minoan world, not as primitive but as innovative. Here is the possibility many hesitate to accept. We may never read it. Without additional examples, without a bilingual inscription, without contextual discovery, certainty may remain out of reach. And yet, does mystery diminish value? The Rosetta Stone unlocked hieroglyphs because it offered translation. The Phaistos disc offers none, but perhaps its importance lies elsewhere. It represents the boundary of knowledge, a reminder that history is incomplete, that the past is larger than our ability to reconstruct it. Look again at the spiral. It begins at the outer edge and moves inward. Or perhaps it begins at the center and expands outward, like knowledge, like time, like human curiosity. The disc mirrors our intellectual journey. We move inward seeking clarity only to discover deeper layers of uncertainty. The spiral does not end abruptly, it converges. It draws us toward a center we cannot quite grasp. Somewhere in Bronze Age Crete, someone pressed those symbols into clay. They had intent, purpose, perhaps devotion, perhaps record, perhaps storytelling. They could not have imagined that thousands of years later, their message would survive, but their language would not. That future generations would stare at their symbols, tracing them with wonder, but never hearing their voice. There is something profoundly human in that. We all want to be understood, across time, across distance, across silence. The Phaistos Disc is not merely an archaeological puzzle. It is a reminder that knowledge is fragile, that communication depends on continuity, that civilizations can speak and still be forgotten. Perhaps one day another disc will be found. Perhaps a breakthrough will come. Or perhaps this spiral will remain closed forever. And maybe that is its final message. Not every mystery is meant to be solved. Some exist to remind us how much we still do not know. Si spirem cognitionis amas, signum da, coniunt nobis. If you found this journey into the unknown as fascinating as we did, please show your support. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join us as we explore more of history's greatest mysteries. Your curiosity fuels our quest.